There we go. Okay, so that's the video of the test of the machine. Now, you don't see much happening during this test in terms of description of input and output, but what you do see is a motor spinning, and that motor has a number of ferrite cores and coils around the periphery of that motor. And I'm going to show you right now what the schematic of that device looked like. Okay, here's the device. And he called that his magnetogravitic perpetual oscillatory motor. So he had neodymium magnets plus coils around cores to form 20 sets. Now in the schematic, only 4 are shown for simplicity, but in the MP4 video I just showed you, you saw the series of coils described or shown right here around the periphery. So those sets of coils are charged from a 12-volt battery. One 12-volt battery charged only by inductive kickback pulse drives the inverter at 230 volts AC, which is quite a voltage he's getting out of this small device. And a small rotary transformer sets the voltage at 60 to provide 12 volts for optic triggers plus 48 volts for a charging bank. The IGBTs trigger coils, and I'll bring that up right here. Let's see. Hold on, let me bring that around. We've got the IGBTs down here that are triggering the coils for 1 nanosecond, which is a very short time period, to reverse coil magnitude polarity. Slotted disc triggers an optic switch to drive the IGBT rotor right here. Rotor axle pulleys drives external alternator generator to drive external loads at designed RPM. It runs on the faux principle, which is his Sanskrit definition of the ether, perpetually by its self-generated potential. It exchanges simultaneous potential with sequential harmonics in each cycle. So that's a schematic of the video that you just saw. And the next thing I'm going to bring up is a computer rendering of what the device looks like, so that the readers can get, or the listeners can get, a better picture of it. All right, that should be coming up. So these were the coils that were shown in the schematic, and then the neodymium magnets here were driven around that disc and caused the voltage spiking to get to 230 volts. And he said a perpetual motion machine was designed, or actually running, based on his design. I'll show you another shot of it. It's a photograph. And stop screen. Okay. We're going to present the next shot. This is a picture of it, so it's a little bit clearer than the video. So these are the arms that are connected to the coils on the disc. And this is the optical generator right here, the optical trigger right here. I'll show you another close-up taken from another angle of the machine that we have. It's a little bit blurry, but it gives you another dimension. Okay, so there, that should be coming up now. Yeah, so that's the machine. That gives you a basic size reference, because you can see some test equipment there on the table. So it looks like it's probably less than 2 feet in diameter. And once again, you can see the optic, or the coils that he has on the periphery of the machine. I'll go back to the diagram once again, just so you can look at that for a refresher. And Well, all I can tell you is that as he got older and he got up into his 90s, and I met an engineer from India that had known him and talked to him before last couple of years. He got increasingly hard to get a hold of, but he wanted to get a lot of money for this machine. And I think the final figure he was coming up was he wanted $1 trillion for it. So obviously that wasn't going to happen. But he did present this information to a group of people, these diagrams and these photos I showed, and he said that it was over Unity and it was a perpetual motion machine. We'd have no idea if there were any other witnesses to the machine. And I can tell you this, we have no idea where the machine is today. He passed away in India. We've tried to find his son, who came to the United States and worked in California area and got into venture capital and high-tech industries back there. He would probably be my age or older. So we're talking a guy in his 70s. He may have passed away too. We don't know, but we've not been able to find him. So basically, that's the end of the presentation, Steve. I just wanted to follow up from that talk we did 2 weeks ago and encourage people to get to your website and take a look at that talk. And it's the basic introduction to Srinivasan and who he was. And what got me onto him was his 2010 experiment with the solar eclipse.
Okay, well, we did have a comment here. Tom Martins, and he said this was perpetual, that batteries need to be removed from the system once it's up and running.
Sure.
And I'd like to make a comment on that. I used to kind of believe in that, but then I worked on a machine, and when we started, the machine was like, we had a battery, and it was like 9 volts, and it couldn't even turn the generator, okay, because it was a generator motor combination, and theoretically that should not ever work. It should always drag down the battery. But in this case here, once it started running, it charged that battery up to 14 volts in that, and the battery is part of the circuit. Sometimes I'm thinking the battery is a chemical interface between dimensions, and it can convert energy from one dimension into another dimension, which explains why some of these things have to have batteries, because it's like an inverter, basically, a dimensional inverter.
Yeah, that's a good point, because the battery could be the ether tap itself. The chemistry and what's going on in the battery could be the tap where we're tapping into the ether and it's flowing through the battery. That is a good point. I totally agree with what was said, that if you could remove the batteries and you lift it up in the air and you can pass a hula hoop through it or something to show that there's no connections and no batteries and it's perpetually running, yeah, that's nice. But Steve, that's a really good point. It may be in some cases that the battery itself is the ether tap.
Yeah, and the generator, the current it's generating is just like what causes to operate. It's kind of like if you take these portable tools like a drill or something, and you can't, if you let the battery run down, you can't recharge that battery. Okay, but there's a trick to that. You could take that battery, okay, and jumper it with another battery, get just enough charge in there to put it back into the charger. Then the charger recognizes and goes ahead and charges it. So sometimes you need that stimulus, And if you've ever worked on a alternative electric generator, you have to have an excitation current in there to get it to work, So sometimes things are necessary, that may not seem like logical to most people, but it's important.
Yeah, I can give you another example of that. What brings to mind from what you said is that Shuichi Inamata, who came to, I think it was the 93 conference in Colorado, International Symposium on New Energy, 94. He was a top research engineer at what the Japanese equivalent of the National Bureau of Standards. And they were charging big capacitors, and they were using different types of circuitry and pulsing very high voltage, pulse frequencies to charge capacitors. And what got him into this whole area is something what he finally did called shadow energy. It was like chi or ki. He called it ki energy, and he called it shadow energy. And what they found is that these capacitors, once they were charged, when they discharged them, they got more energy out of them than they had put into them. So something went on in the internals of that capacitor, possibly like you're talking about, something's going on in the internals of the battery. That's where the energy was coupled in. And in his case, the energy was coupled in the capacitance. Because how else would they get more power out than they put in?
So, okay, so
yeah.
Okay, so you done reading this one, or I can go ahead and bring Bernard on?
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
And here's Bernard, the crypto alchemist. And so, what are you going to introduce us to tonight, Bernard? Are you there? He might have stepped out of the room for a minute. Anyway, I'll bring him back in a minute. Anyway, I hope to get a lot more, see a lot more devices come in for this summer. I hope you decide to come to the conference, Toby. I want to remind people to get their abstracts in if you want to speak. We only have a limited number of speakers, please.
I've been thinking about throwing something together, Steve, and calling it Tesla's Prophecy.
Yeah, that'd be pretty good. Yeah. And oh, there he is. So, anyway, Bernard, you're on stage now.
Just in time.
Yeah.
How's it going? And Toby, my volume's a little low, sadly, on my computer, but as I was setting up, I heard you mention you did an experiment with like the full moon and an eclipse, and it affected the results.
Well, actually, it was Srinivasan, Gopalakrishnan Srinivasan in India, who coined the term back in like 87, reactionless generator. He did an eclipse an experiment with the eclipse of the sun in 2010. And so 2 weeks ago on this program, I described that experiment, and then I described our attempt to replicate that experiment during last April's total solar eclipse.
So
interesting. So in my own electrolysis alchemy experiments, and ancient alchemists, they attributed several of the metal elements to the different planetary bodies. When I'm making monoatomic silver through electrolysis, so it's like a pure silver anode and a pure silver cathode, I have found that it's literally the production rate is tied to the cycle of the moon. And as the moon waxes and wanes, it produces very little amounts. And as the moon goes to a full moon, it starts producing a lot of the monoatomic material. And then a couple times on super moons, it completely filled like the Tupperware that I had that running in. And then so I tested live on the Alien Scientist channel about a year ago an eclipse of the moon, and it started producing a whole bunch because it was a full moon leading up to the eclipse. Then the eclipse happened and it stopped production of it completely during the eclipse, and then started producing again a whole bunch after the eclipse because of course it was still a full moon.
Wow.
So I found that interesting. And then after that result, I was like, okay, what about the sun? The sun is gold, according to the old alchemists. So in my production of monoatomic gold through electrolysis, where I have a pure 24 karat gold anode, pure 24 karat gold cathode, thus it's pure elements of just those metals when I'm making these monoatomics, and why I claim that they are, because it's distilled water and just those metals. And that the sun, the monoatomic gold, it would make the perfect nice white powder during the daytime. And then I couldn't ever run the experiments, like leave the process going for 24 hours, because eventually I'd always find that there'd be like this black stuff that formed and like corrupted it and changed the process. And then what I ended up noticing, it's anytime the sun sets is when it starts making the black stuff. So it only makes the white monoatomic stuff during the day while the sun is out in full. Just it blew my mind with it, but that more experiments and tied with the testing how the heavenly bodies, the sun, the moon, eclipses, and their positions actually affects real world physics.
Are you familiar with Kalisko's work? She was inspired by Steiner in the biodynamics arena.
I am not at all. That's new names to me.
Yeah, so this is what you've just done now really ties the knot in relationship to what she had done. And this was probably in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and Steiner had suggested it. So with each planet having a metal associated with it, she would take like gold chloride and silver nitrate, let's say, and mix them together, and then would take a piece of filter paper and make it in the shape of a tube. So we've got, say, a 3-inch diameter or 3-inch long piece of filter paper coiled, so it's 1-inch diameter, and then set it in the petri dish, and then pour that solution in the petri dish, and as it wicks up, that's basically the beginnings of liquid chromatography, because as it wicks up the filter paper, different colors show up and different patterns show up, and it's repeatable. And so that can tell you, well, there's silver nitrate and there's gold chloride in that solution. If you do that when there's a conjunction of the planets associated with gold and silver, completely different pattern. Replicable.
Really? I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so she did that with all the different conjunctions of the planets, and showed this and demonstrated it over and over again.
Okay, well, that is amazing. Thank you for sharing that with me, Toby, because I'm going to have to look into that, do a full presentation on it, and then start replicating it with my own experiments alongside, because that's exactly it.
I'll send you a link to the book and the information about it.
I appreciate that.
So what do you have planned for us tonight, Bernard?
All right. So I guess first, quickly, if you want to bring up my other camera there, the BurnEye, just to give a little reference of some of my experiments, like right in the front middle there. Although it looks pink purple, that's just due to the lighting. It's actually the pure white monoatomic. That one is zinc and silver combination that I was using, is zinc and silver as the anode and cathode when making it. And behind it to the left, in between BurnEye, there's another jar with a bunch of white powder at the bottom there. And you can see how it's more illuminated with white light, and see that it's actually looking white. It is from iron and copper as anodes and cathodes in it, so that I've been able to replicate and turn any of the noble metals, the base metals, off of the anode sides and a little bit on the cathode side, that it will always produce this original white monoatomic material, just like David Hudson has talked about the white powdered gold that he makes through the acidic process, where the process that I use is exponentially cheaper in like energy and resources, as you're not having to constantly break it down through chemical reactions. Instead, it's just through a small amount of electricity, and then it's bonding with the saline solution. It will fully dissolve the metal first in the water, which turns it into like ionic gold or ionic silver or whatever metal that it is, which is like the purest form. Like a lot of people talk about the colloidal silver, but that can be toxic, especially if it's turns or oxidizes, and that's when it always turns blue like this, right? This is actually blue copper oxide, and I can turn gold into the oxides. Any of the metals turn blue, and then it's no longer monoatomic, it is diatomic, and you will die if you consume or get that oxidized heavy metals into you and instantly start getting this heavy metal poisoning. And that's why you see all the people that did die, they turn blue, they look like Smurfs, and they're like, oh, it's so good, but it's like, no, you've got the oxidized heavy metal poisoning, and you are going to die from the diatomics right away. You need to have the white single white atom of the metals. And that there's also, I believe, a hydroxide or hydride that turns red, so on all of the metals too. And that there seems to be, I've seen a lot of studies or publications, a couple of recently, of these cold state superconductive, and they call them red state material. And it's the hydride aspects of it, I believe. And the ancient alchemists called this the red mercurial state, but it wasn't actually that it's mercury in that red state, it's the hydrogen or hydride aspect of it. And that where I got the best testable lab alchemy information was from Sir Isaac Newton's recently released collection of alchemy texts, and that's where I read, and it was translated, his 7 color states of transmutational metals. And through it, he has the black state, the white state, the blue state, the red state, the yellow state, which they also call the sulfur state. And I don't believe necessarily, unless it is a transmutation somehow of creating sulfur out of the reaction, but it doesn't smell like sulfur. I just shared a picture, Steve, if you want to bring it up. I can show in the electrolysis reaction here that it's yellow, and that they say that when the metal is live is when you can get these transmutational states. And for so long, people are like, oh, it's just hocus pocus, how can you have living metal? It's like, no, they're literally talking about electrical current. When the current is live, when there's a flow of electrons through the metals, that is when you start getting this electrolysis reaction and these transmutational states begin. And he states that first you will get the white state, which is the monoatomic. Second, you will get the blue state, which is the diatomic oxidized version. Then you will get this red mercurial state that they say, and then they say it's activated at that state. And that could be this red metamaterial now that they're starting to reproduce in labs as hydrides. And then they say when it dies, it will turn to the sulfur state. And what I have up here is showing the sulfuric state that they called it as, but I don't believe that it is sulfur because it doesn't smell as such. But it is when you put a double negative into the reaction, and then the anode side corrodes to a point where the metal is just about to break off, and that every time turns into this yellow colored materials. And that it doesn't matter what metal or state of transmutational metals, as they call it, whether it's, because in a reaction or in the materials that it produces, as soon as it goes into the next state, simultaneously everything in your electrolyte reaction or jar or just collection, anything in the water, the materials itself simultaneously will oxidize, or simultaneously will hydrize, or simultaneously it goes, you just put one drop of like a yellow state into a blue or a white or a red, and then instantly all of the other material turns into that state. And it's just what I've been able to reproduce from what the ancient alchemical texts and Isaac Newton was talking about and mentioned. Then they said there's this black state, and in this picture here, you can see the coils. They're all copper coils, but they have this black coloring. They self-nanocoat, and that I originally learned from the Mehran Keshe, the Keshe Foundation. He always talks about nanocoating the outside of a material, and that he taught the process that you can either use a flame to heat it up just before it gets to the glowing red hot state, and you're breaking down the outer covalent bonds of that metal into closer to the single atom, so it can then interact with these nanoparticles in the plasma states and bring it into that solid metal. And so there's either the flame way of doing it, there's the caustic method of doing it, or there is the electrolysis way of doing it. And I've repeated all of the above, but then the metals here, it actually will self-nanocoat as you leave it running and connected. And I will take that picture down and show another picture of a better demonstration of it. Right here. Oh, wrong button. There we go. And this is, if I want to hit share, there we go. So here we have these triple copper coils, and they've never been in the water. The water is where there's the blue oxidized level, and any of the copper that is below water level is oxidizing into this blue, the blue copper. But then when I have the jar sealed, and this was sealed for about 2 years, I reopened it, and this black coating, this heavy coating of black, whatever it is, I need to get it tested, but you get this nano layered cover of pure black that happens on it. And what's very fascinating, and Mehran Keshe originally stated it, I was like, that's crazy, like it couldn't happen, but I've repeated it now pretty much on every single one. I've got over 100 different examples, but it will literally nano coat underneath the plastic insulation of wires connecting different electrolysis or electrolytes or whatever it is. But that I've got some of where it's like up to 10 feet of insulated copper wire between one Tupperware of water outside and the other one. And when leaving it for like a year, I come back and then I stripped the plastic off of it. And sure enough, it's completely coated in this black self-nano coating material. And it's just another correlation to the 7 states of transmutation that Sir Isaac Newton and the Alchemist talk about. And then lastly, there is also the pink crystalline state of transmutational metals that Isaac Newton talks about. And this is the most relevant and important one out of them all, as he says that when you have the metal in this pink crystal state, it is when you are able to transmutate one solid element into another. And I believe that how this process is done is that you connect it, and it's as the anode side, and then you switch it over to the cathode side. And on the cathode side of an electrolysis reaction is where you have the atomic hydrogen being produced from that water, and that by then inducing or putting the resonant frequency of that metal that you want to transmutate into. So for instance, you would have lead into this crystal pink state, and then you would have it with that atomic hydrogen on the outside, and then with inducing that resonant frequency of gold into it, it will give you that low energy nuclear reaction, bonding the atomic hydrogen into the metal, thus giving you the next metal up of it. And I will give you now several, I'll put in front of Bert and Ernie camera there, just give me a moment, of this pink crystal state of metals, and that's literally, it glistens, they sparkle, like you have copper sparkling with crystals off of it, or gold sparkling, or silver. I've done it into all of the different metals in this state, and I will give you a demonstration here.
I believe the audio is working. He's just being quiet. Is that right, Bernard? Maybe he can't hear us.
Okay, so in there, I guess, are you able maybe to solo screen that, Steve?
I'm going to pull out. I don't know if I can solo screen that one.
In the bottom, but like below where all of our different faces are, in the little boxes, in the top left box, it gives you an option. If you put your mouse over it, should say solo layout.
Well, the solo layout is for me.
Oh, okay, never mind.
So
All good. But yeah, so the middle one, the one in the middle, it's actually iron that is in this pink red state. And then the one on the right side, it's actually silver that is in that pink state. And I've got the one on the left, two copper coils in that pink crystalline state. And the cameras don't ever do it justice of when you move light around them and how much they glisten and sparkle back and just reflect light. And they're literally in this pink crystalline state that Sir Isaac Newton talks about and states. And it's that, you know, we regard Sir Isaac Newton so high up in the science community and in physics and whatnot, and here he is with what were these suppressed and classified alchemical writings for hundreds of years, and then he comes out and says that there is this pink crystal state that when you get it in, you can transmutate one metal into another. So why would he write that unless he was actually able to do so?
okay.
And yeah, so there's that. And then I can show some other pictures of different things that I've got examples of through the alchemical process. or through the electrolysis process, sorry. I shared another picture. So here you have the self-organization of these monoatomics, this one just being copper, but it does it in all reactions. And although there's coils here, so there's 2 coils here, and this time it split it into 2 of the self-going spirals where, oops, wrong way. Oh, well, now that we're on this one, so here you can see this is a pure silver Canadian maple as the anode, and here you can see this cloud of the pure white monoatomic material, but throughout you have the blue diatomic oxidized versions of it, and then also the copper and the copper oxide as well. And it's this reaction, whereas the moon and the in its cycles waxed and waned, the size of the cloud of this monoatomic material would shrink, and then on the supermoon it would literally turn all the blue oxidized diatomic material back to the full white single monoatomic, and it was quite fat, like just wild. And I'm going to be setting up here and aiming to reproduce these and just try to do like a month-long live stream of it going and showing the process and how it evolves with the cycles. So here you can see where it turned the yellow after the anode broke. And wrong way. So more of, here's another one of the self-organization of these monoatomic materials, and that it happens, they do that, lots of the different coils, anodes, cathodes, that I've made and used. This one is amazing as it shows the oxygen bubbles, and oxygen being magnetic, completely sticking to this copper triple solenoid anode, but underneath it, it actually is covered in a blue oxidized goo of the copper, and that it seems like when I take it off, the entire structure of that copper essentially is like gooish, and that if you were to disconnect it and take it out of the water at that point, it would, as it would dry and oxidize out, it just would crumble and lose all integrity. Where if you, when I continue to run that, the transmutational or electrolysis process, that then it turns into the red state next, and it starts to re-solidify itself, and then afterwards it will then turn into the pink crystal state, at which point when you take it back out of water, it will just revert back into its original copper state. So it's quite interesting that it like kind of jellifies, and as it goes through these different alchemical transmutational states that the ancient alchemists talk about, and why I believe that if you put in the right harmonic frequency of the resonant frequency of what you're trying to do in the reaction, that it will have that latticed low energy nuclear cold fusion reaction that you can actually do on a large mass of a physical metal element, just like Isaac Newton was talking about. All right, on to what else do we have to show? Some more of the self-organization. Here's another one, and it always does the spiraling. Okay, sorry, got what else? There's more photos, more examples. what to share next. This one's quite interesting because that is just 2 copper coils on the inside of it, but I had left it with a zinc anode. This was the cathode, and I let it run, I think, for about a year. And what you're seeing is like the white monoatomic zinc casing that overtook it. You got some of the blue oxidized, and then you have whatever this yellow, what they call the sulfur state happening. And then you also have the red and pink crystal and hydride like oozing out, almost as if it's like bleeding out, or it's blood or alive or something. It's quite wild. And when the couple times that I've actually dried out this, when it's in this red pink state, and dried the material out, and then it's like I've rubbed it with another metal foil, and it ignites. It heats up and it ignites and dissolves other like foil metals. And I desperately need labs to like test all of my different materials that I've created as I've like isolated them and have samples. And here we go. Here's another good picture of like what's starting to form the pink state. And this is a silver coin here, and this is a copper coil and copper. And that they just indefinitely stay in these pink and red states of transmutation that are described. This guy was very interesting. It's copper wire, 2 layers of copper wire insulated or uninsulated in triangle windings or formation, and there's 3 of them within each other, and with each one being separated by aluminum foil. And that I found that it would just like instantly start heating up in your hand at the bottom, like to the point where like it felt like it was burning you. And that it turned into a gag at my old place. When I like knew people would come over, I'd be like, here, hold this, and like 2/3 of them would be like, what the hell, and drop it as if they were getting burnt from it. And that for some reason, anyone that came in intoxicated was absolutely null to the effect, and were like, what the hell, like just would look at you like you're stupid, and like nothing was going on. It's very strange. Here, I will show exactly what I'm talking about. It's been ripped apart just to show Jeremiah, as he wanted to see it, to try to reproduce it. And that I built it off of 3D printed tetrahedron, and just did the copper wrappings like that. And that the start of the wire always goes along and then focuses the energy up to the very top. So I'm directing this pyramidal energy or circuit always towards the top, to the top of it. And it's in rough shape and doesn't really work like it used to. So I'm gonna try to make another one. And ooh, thank God that bulb didn't break. Oops, yeah. So that's some of my work. Let's see, what else do we have? There was this one. This was one of the first times I ever produced an anode of the Keshi's nano-coated triple solenoid copper coils, and plugged it in as a anode. And then the cathode I was using was a 1 ounce silver maple coin. And just that it gives you there was like a couple of exclusion zones. This one was like the white monatomic, this was like the blue, and then it would create these plasmid clusters at the bottom. And that it seems like all electrolysis reactions do this, where you'll have like clear zones, certain layers, and it gave me a new perspective of what the Alchemist meant when something was live, because you're plugging electricity into it, making it live, and then the electrochemical reactions of their alchemical process begin. Yeah, guys got any questions or so far?
Well, there was a question before about what your source of water is.
So anytime I'm doing an experiment for like the scientific purpose or for a first time, I will use distilled water. And I've just found, like, for cheapness of like when I'm making my own stuff and whatnot, that the tap water I use in Calgary seems to be clean enough to have no difference. But I make sure that anytime I'm running something like to make samples to be tested, it's always with distilled water that I will use. But inversely, though, if you live in an area where your water is polluted with like other toxic metals or heavy metals, you definitely do not want to use like that, even for like making. All right, yes, here's another. Here we go. So in this picture, I've got, and what I've been doing a series called Agricultural Alchemy. And so for the longest time, I was calling the water colloidal water, but that is actually wrong. This is the colloidal material. Colloidal refers to small nano chunks. So if you still have some pure metal, say the pure silver itself still in the metal state where it's just tiny little granular nanomaterial, that is colloidal. They also refer to the blue oxidized activated diatomic as colloidal, and that is what colloidal is. The water that dissolves the metals and that I can get it up in the reaction when it's through electrolysis reaction. The anode will first dissolve itself into the water, giving you the ionic silver until it reaches, or ionic gold, whatever metal you're using, until the water itself reaches a super saturated state. At that point, it will start producing both nano silver or nano gold as like a sheet, like with the electrolysis or electrolytic, where the known process where you use a metal through electrolysis to coat something else in a thin sheet of that metal, right? That will produce half of it, and then the other half starts forming, and that's where you get the two exclusion zones. One is where it's giving you the nano metal as a metal, and then the other is where it's giving you this white fluffy plasma ormus, the monoatomic metals, and that it separates and it keeps the two separate from them. And then after that, so yeah, it gives you the blue oxidized, and then I've also gotten purple, and here this is purple gold, this is purple silver, and this is purple zinc. And then we have purple gold again and purple silver again. And that how I got the purple was, once again, leaving, I believe, and I'm going to have to test it, but I just left them outside for days. And I'm guessing for the gold, it was the sun that turned it, and for the silver, it was the moon. Not entirely sure, but it turned into gold or purple state. And that it's literally, this picture here is over a year. It might even be 2 years now. It's either 2022 or 2023 summer that I took it. And you can still see right here, one of the jars, that's still the same purple state gold that is now forever purple. I can put it up and it give you actual color. it is full purple. And is this why the Royals had royal purple? And I am not recommending anyone guinea pig themselves or do it, because you probably die if you do it wrong. I don't know. But myself, when I taste the water from the purple material, the ionic gold that comes from the purple, it actually tastes sweet. It gives it a sweet taste. And that I've been testing the different waters. So if you pull that picture back up again of the different states of them, and that they forever stay in these different colored states. And here we have the full white state. And then this one like an orangey brown. So I don't know what, but it forever stays in it. The blue, the purples, another brown one. And that I been over the last couple of years testing them on plants, and that I've got pictured and documented one summer where I actually poured a bit of the purple nano gold around a lettuce plant in my garden, and it grew to 6 feet tall. I don't have the picture handy on me, but I've done many streams on it just on my channel. If anyone interested, look in my search agricultural alchemy series, and that was, I believe, 2022 that I did that. But for the last 3 years now, the half of the garden that I pour the ionic silver gold waters on, compared to the other half of the garden that I just use the regular tap water, consistently every year, the side that has the monoatomic or purple plasmid, whatever ionic water from the gold silver grows 2 to 3 times the size of the rest of the garden every time. And it shows the bigger kale, the bigger spinach, the bigger lettuce, and the beets as well. I should have had the pictures ready for this presentation. My apologies that I don't. And a lot of them are still on my phone. So here's some of the electrolysis that I run outside. And I'm in Canada. So, and in the plains of Alberta, it gets up to minus 30 or down to minus 30 degrees Celsius. So even the salt water is well frozen. This, of course, being in the summer. But why I'm showing this is I use the plastic Tupperware stuff outside, plastic bottles, because it freezes. Otherwise, jars, glass explodes. But that in the winter, I will plug in while it's completely frozen solid. I will plug in, and I'm just using a 5-volt USB as a power source into it. And that all of a sudden, the ice starts melting and producing hydrogen, and that you can run this hydrogen production out of this salt water ice, even in the winter. So for the potential of, practicality of the water car, it does work. Here you can see this is like pure aluminum and going in, and that you've got some of the pink and red states forming, and that it then turns completely the metal into that state. And on this one, a bunch of the pure white monoatomic. This has aluminum, zinc, and copper and tungsten all in this reaction, and seeing that it is all the pure white monoatomic being formed. And that is how you get the pure ormus, and any ormus that you use, you want it to be in that white state as opposed to any of the other colored states. What I forgot to mention is blue here. The blue and like any of like the brown stuff, the waters that came on that I tested on my planters, the plants were stunted and almost died, and that it's no good, and thus the diatomic water, even on plants, like harms it and is horrible and bad. And that is why you always test things on plants first. And that, of course, another key part is that I was using salt water to make this material, and that you got to rinse it, like I do it at least 9 times, where I pour all of the water out, where it's just little monoatomic or metamaterials at the bottom, and then refill it with the fresh water. You let it sit for a couple of days, and then rinse, repeat 9 times to get all salt out before experimenting on plants. Otherwise, or even for the stuff I like to drink, the ionic water that I've been drinking myself, and I've been drinking the ionic water of the purple gold for 4 years now since I first made it, and I've been drinking the ionic water of the white monoatomic for an additional 5 before that. But that I never ever consume or drink it when it's cloudy or mixed up, or consume any of the material itself, as well. There's the legends that there's turn you into a demigod. I don't know about it, but it also documented lots of people dying. So, don't consume it and don't die, and don't poison yourself and give yourself heavy metal poisoning. And that from the research I've done, it's written into the Egyptian Book of the Dead, and that it, like I was talking about at the start of it, being tied to the cycles of the moon and the sun, and why their process of when they did consume it, while it was during the solstice or it was during the equinox, and that they had to prepare and do all these different practices to get themselves ready for it ahead of time. Well, that wasn't just ritual, that there's actual something to it, and that is why they had whatever complex processes there are to it, and that if you don't do it according to that, it seems that from all the documented cases of people actually consuming this stuff, that they go crazy, or they get poisoned, or all sorts of bad negative things. So it's something that needs to have the scientific process further discovered or developed into. I will say that twice I did eat the pure white monoatomic gold when I had it, but it's very expensive to make because I'm using pure gold, obviously, out of it. And I did it during the solstice and once during the equinox. And I just had just a tiny little, probably about a milligrams worth, or milligram, or I guess it was a 10-gram coin. So yeah, it was a gram each time that I ate of the white powder. And what it did, it instantly, I had photographic memories from when I was all the way up to I was a 2-year-old child. It was so weird. It was I ate it right outside my childhood house, and I flashed back to being 2 and digging some plant up, and my mom scolding me, and just memories, and I had this photographic memory for the next 3 or 4 days where I could instantly just recall anything, and that it gave me just non-stop energy. I pretty much didn't sleep for 3 days. I pretty much didn't need to eat for 3 days, and just was so driven. But then crashed once because I didn't have any more to eat, because it's gold and it's expensive. So it's you don't continue that process, then you're losing the effect. And I slept for a day, and I woke up sick, and I woke up with the cold or a flu. And out of the 10 or 9 years that I've been drinking these ionic waters, I had not caught a cold or flu once. I have been exposed to the COVID thing over 50 times with people that had it. My mom caught it, she wasn't vaxxed. My dad caught it, he was vaxxed, but lived around both of them. Never caught it once the entire time. I have not been sick in almost a decade since drinking the ionic waters, except for the 2 times I ate the monoatomic gold after I then crashed, slept, and woke up and had a cold because it crashed my immune system from whatever it did. And just fascinating stuff. And I guinea pigged on myself, but this is not health advice whatsoever. And I could die at any time by poisoning myself accidentally. So don't try this. But I do. I don't. That's why I don't consume it whatsoever. That's just the 2 times. But I also, over the years, have made sure to go to my regular doctor and get blood work to make sure, and that they've said that I do not have, each time I've been tested, my blood, the metal levels are normal. There's no like accumulation of heavy metals from what they've done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's cut it there for this week, and I'll let you get you on maybe next week again, and we get even more into this stuff. I'm very interested in alchemy. Do you have any comments, Toby, or anyway?
I just wanted to show that book if I can pull it up.
Absolutely.
Let's see. Present. Let me see if I can find this tab. Oh yeah, maybe that one. You see that?
Hold on, let me see.
Metal planet relationship.
Okay, see that, Bernie?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. The metal planet relationship. This is amazing. Thank you, Toby.
Yeah, by Nick Kolostrom, and he goes through the Kalisko Steiner work on the transmutation. Well, not the transmutation, but the metal planet relationship, and the how to do the experiment where you wick up the solutions into the filter paper. So a couple, like 5 years ago, that was done by Borderland Sciences printed that book, and so that's out of print for many years. And some idiot had it up on Amazon.com for like $5,000. It's crazy. But I just while you were talking, I was searching around and I saw one for £100 somewhere. But if anybody that's watching the chat, maybe you can find a PDF of that online. It's not a very thick book. It's only like that big and maybe, that thick of a book. So maybe it's been put online by now. Somebody scanned it and put it online.
I am going to have to focus on trying to find that for sure. And if not, well, $100 apparently for my wish list if someone wants to buy it out there. And
£100.
I definitely need to find that. And well, never mind.
Okay. Yeah. So anyway, I just want to encourage you guys to get your abstracts in for next year's conference. Remind everyone we still have the VODs. It's a bargain, and don't forget our YouTube. And I'll see you guys hopefully in another week here. And don't forget, if you like what we do, don't forget to give us a thumbs up on the YouTube channel and everything. Okay, and so with that, I'm going to call it a night, and we'll all get together in about a week here.
Thanks, Bernard.